Well, you already know the speech, so I don't know whether it matters. Boy, what a nice reception. It got my attention, but it sure identifies the fact that the revolution is alive and well, even up north here. Wonderful. You know, a few weeks ago they told me there'd be a nice crowd here, and I said, well, don't over-predict, you know, but it looks like they under-predicted. This is fantastic. Thank you very much for coming. You know, the country and the world is in a mess today, and I'm quite convinced that we know exactly how we got here, and we know exactly what to do, and one thing for sure is we don't need more government. Every single day we wake up with more news. This week certainly has been international debt crisis. And all they're proposing is more bailouts. And right now, you know, they're talking about bailing out Greece through the European banking system and the European countries. But at the same time, although our leaders in the Treasury as well as the Federal Reserve are relatively quiet, but believe me, we're going to be in hawk as well. So we have to be very alert to what's happening, because there's no way you can bail out a world deeply in debt with more debt and more spending. It makes no sense. This week, unfortunately, we had a historic event occur early in the week. Our national debt, which went over $15 trillion, went over our GDP. It's the first time in the history of our whole country. But it's not only our country that's facing this. The world has a GDP of $195 trillion, and guess what? Their deficit this year is the same amount. So this is absolutely unsustainable, and we have to recognize this. It's been going on for a long time. I had talked about this for many years and anticipated that we would end up with a worldwide crisis like this. But I got energized, you know, in the early 1970s, realizing that our change in monetary policy would lead to this. And this is the reason that I talk a whole lot about reining in, auditing, and eventually getting rid of the Federal Reserve System. When a Federal Reserve System comes into being and promises to be the lender of last resort, they usually are the last resort, and it'll be the last thing we do. But the real evil here, and in 1971, we severed the last link of our dollar to gold, which ushered in this new age that we've had since 1971, and that meant that the politicians could spend money without any responsibility. They could tax, but there wouldn't be enough. They could borrow, but that would never be enough. Then they resorted to inflation. Now, the collapse didn't come in the 1970s, although it was a rocky period of time, but it ushered in this age where there's endless spending. Conservatives and liberals said deficits don't matter. Deficits do matter. They matter to you as an individual. They matter to us as a country. They matter to the whole world. But we ushered in this age where we depended on the Fed just to create the money when we had to pay the bills. Now, when the country is very wealthy, they can do that for a while. But then eventually they have to borrow a lot more money and live beyond our means. During the Great Depression, we were a creditor nation. Now, since the 1970s, we've been a great debtor nation. We are the biggest debtor nation in the history of the world. We owe over $3 trillion to foreigners. And they think we're going to bail out everybody else. It makes absolutely no sense. It's the Federal Reserve that, by interfering in the monetary system, monkeying around with interest rates, they create the bubbles. And for a while, they can create one bubble and patch it up again, but eventually the big bubble bursts. And this is what we're witnessing right now. We're witnessing the end of an economic era. This is a tremendous opportunity for us who believe in liberty to get our message out. It is well known by all those who are pretending to patch this network and financial system together again. They know what we know. They know it's unsustainable, it's not a viable system, and they are making plans. They are making plans, and they are not too secretive about it. They're talking about a worldwide fiat currency. Instead of the dollar standard, they want to use the United Nations and the IMF and whatever. But you know, we ought to stay old-fashioned. We ought to believe in national sovereignty and that we deal with our own problems without world government. This whole idea about depending on sovereignty, of course the most sovereign part of government should be us over sovereignty of our own lives. That's where it should originate. Then it should be with our families and friends, our neighbors, our communities, and our local governments. But obviously we've had too much drift toward Washington. Our federal government is way too big. Our Constitution, the people have failed the Constitution. It says the Constitution was written not to restrain you in any way, but to restrain the federal government.
And sometimes it amazes me how long the system lasts. There's a lot of momentum to a free society. The wealth is gone. Our liberties are being undermined, and it is coming to an end, but I'm amazed it's lasted this long. But take for example, the ineptness of what they did when we invaded Iraq. They said, well, we have to influence the dissidents. There's some people over there that might not like us being in our country, so we need to go over there with a lot of cash, because American cash still has some value. They packed up carloads of this, plane loads of cash, to the tune of $60 billion. And guess what? They can't even account for it. It is utterly amazing that the system tolerates this, and that we who run a program like that are going to bail out the world.